Part 4. Ivan Papanin, 1937, Life on Ice Floe. Diary. To 7 July. Eugene began to make precise magnetic determinations, since in this work it is necessary to simultaneously check the readings of two devices. Theodoric came to the aid of Zhenya. Zhenya worked all day. Pyotr Petrovich again busied himself at his winch. He strengthened it, laid it with boards. I was putting the warehouse in order. In the morning, a light breeze blew, and it became possible to recharge the batteries a little. For 10 days there was no wind. We could not pass on correspondence to the newspapers, and send even a short message home. Now everyone has sent telegrams to their old ladies. In the afternoon, Petrovich and I got into the kayak and sailed to inspect our ice floe. We drove for a long time. Only in one place it was necessary to move the kayak on the ice at a distance of 20 meters, and there lakes were formed everywhere, communicating with each other by straits and forming a sea. We took interesting pictures. After dinner, Ernst Teodorovich fell asleep like a dead man. He was on duty all night, and in the morning he worked together with Zhenya. Pyotr Petrovich began processing the station. He prepares distilled water, selects chemical utensils. Tomorrow morning, Petrovich will begin to titrate the full station made 3 days ago. Zhenya also began to carefully keep a diary and write down all the events of the day. To 8 July. We got up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Zhenya made meteorological observations. Ernst passed on the report to Rudolf. Disgusting weather. Sleet, sharp wind, fog. However, Krenkel's heart rejoices. The breeze powered our wind turbine, and it began to charge the batteries. Now Theodoric will be able to rummage the air in search of radio amateurs. These lords of the ether, are well aware of our drifting expedition. The rapid melting destroyed the work of Pyotr Petrovich overnight. The winch is again in danger. Again he began to build supports. Boards, plywood, sticks, pieces of ice, ropes were used. In the afternoon a sharper wind blew. Its speed reaches 4 meters per second. Everyone's eyes sparkled with joy. Our batteries would now be sufficiently saturated, and it would be possible not to limit ourselves in the transmission of telegrams. We sent one correspondence to the newspapers. In the evening, the wind speed increased to 7 meters per second. So much the better. Petrovich lowered the turntable to observe the drift. We were carried to the southeast. The weather today is so nasty that it is disgusting to go outside. It is pouring heavy rain. The snow that we piled up around the tent has been washed away. I will have to sprinkle it again. Beasley has now resumed his attempts to get to the meat warehouse. This is the 3rd time. To 9 July. I don't want to look out into the street. The snow is falling in large flakes, wet and nasty. You can't work without a raincoat. The only thing that pleases me is the wind that saturates the batteries. Pyotr Petrovich worked on a winch. Every hour he lowered the pinwheel to different depths, determined the currents at all horizons. He was busy with this business for 14 hours at a time. I helped him, twisted the cable with a winch. Petrovich's Primus stove burns all the time. It heats the water. Before each descent, you have to pour boiling water over the turntable. This is necessary for the following reasons. Fresh water accumulated in the hydrological hole penetrates into the mechanism during the descent of the turntable into the mechanism, and freezes there as soon as the pinwheel sinks into the seawater with a negative temperature. Today we had a misfortune. It was good that everything ended relatively well. Pulling out another turntable, Petrovich began to make notes in the book, then quickly bent down to slightly unscrew the plug of the Primus, which was heavily inflated and filled with a mixture of fuel, kerosene in half with gasoline. As soon as Pyotr Petrovich opened the cork, a strong flame appeared. Shirshov screamed and covered his face with his hands. I rushed to his aid, greatly frightened, thinking that he had injured his eyes. It turned out that the plug of the Primus stove broke out and hit him in the eyebrow. He quickly washed his face with alcohol. The burn from the hot cork was not as strong as the blow from it. Blood appeared on his eyebrows. Pepe wiped it with a rag, but did not stop working. How careful should we be in our conditions? After all, such a trifle could incapacitate one of the 4 members of the expedition conducting the main scientific work. The wind continued its work, useful for us. The temperature dropped slightly, 0 degrees. The water pressure at the hole has decreased, but large layers of snow are brought there from all the lakes. All we know is that we are pulling the snow out of the hole. After breakfast, Eugene checked his instruments, and then sat down to make a general map of the drift for the entire time of our stay on the ice. He breaks away from this work only to conduct regular meteorological observations. Ernst began to give radio signals that called not any particular station, but anyone who heard him. 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Europe is now working. America is sleeping, but Radio Bison, as Krenkel calls radio amateurs, appear on the air. He fussed for a long time and suddenly, like a child, joyfully shouted, "Contacted." It was heard by a radio amateur from the Hawaiian Islands, Mr. Troles. Teodorich began to talk to him. A resident of the Hawaiian Islands said that he had read in the newspapers about our expedition, and about us. He is very happy that he managed to contact us. Now it's cloudless in Honolulu, warm, 80 degrees Celsius Fahrenheit. After talking, Krenkel and Troles wished each other every success, and the American, saying goodbye, kindly asked if he could do us any service. Ernst thanked him just as kindly. Less than half an hour after this conversation, Teodoric contacted another radio amateur, a shortwave radio from South Australia. Since the power of our station is only 20 watts, that is, less than that of an average table electric bulb, we consider the North Pole South Australia connection to be a record. Teodoric, of course, is delighted. He regrets that the transmitter does not have hands. He wants to shake them. At night I did not sleep until 3:30, reading Peter I by Alexei Tolstoy. It is very sad that poor audibility does not allow us to receive Posledny news on the radio from Moscow. 30 July. While Zhenya was making astronomical determinations, each of us expressed his assumption about where we were now. Where we were taken 5 days before the time of the last observations, I expressed my opinion. Our latitude is 87 degrees 54 minutes. When Zhenya made the calculations, it turned out that I was wrong by only 1 minute. Our station is located at latitude 87 degrees 53 minutes. In the morning, Pyotr Petrovich studied the drift with the help of a spinner, and in his free minutes he processed the observation materials. Eugene spent the whole day doing calculations, preparing materials about the 2-month drift of our ice floe. He and Petrovich compared the scientific data they collected with the works of Nansen and Sverdrup. I went to the bases to drag part of the load, but I could not work. My hand hurts a lot. I remembered that a few days ago I had carried snow with a shovel to sprinkle the tent. Taking a large piece of wet snow, I dragged it to the tent and barely carried it. And when I threw it off the shovel, I felt a sharp pain in the elbow. Our Dr. Pepe, after examining the sore arm, said that I had a sprain, and lubricated this place with iodine. He told me not to lift heavy objects for several days so that the pain in my arm would subside. Now I am a patient, I do only light work. We received an instruction from Moscow to prepare for servicing the long-distance transpolar flight of Sigismund Levinevsky. Ernst again had tense, hot days. 3-1 July. Teodoric woke up Zhenya. The sun appeared. It was possible to start a daily series on gravity. We listened to the morning review of the newspapers. I went to check the databases again. On the base number 2, everything fell apart. The spare engine fell out from under the percale. A piece of butter lay aside. Food cans, weighing 44 kilograms, crumbled like toy children's blocks. I took a general view with a camera. I chose a new site and began to transfer goods there. In an hour, I dragged more than a ton. Ernst was again talking with his old acquaintance, a radio amateur from the Hawaiian Islands, Mr. Troles said that the newspapers abroad were saying that we were in danger, because the whole ice floe had melted. He even knows such details that we have to carry snow from afar to sprinkle the tent. We calmed him down. Teodorich knocked that our drifting expedition was completely safe. The weather changed dramatically. In the morning there was sun and a light frost, almost 2 degrees. Now the temperature has risen. It began to rain heavily. It's good that our living tent doesn't get wet and it's dry. Petrovich and Zhenya summed up the results of our work for 2 months. In order to transfer the correspondence to the newspapers tomorrow, I came back from the base wet as a chicken, working in a fur shirt. I was sweating profusely. Steam was coming from me, as if from a boiler. After resting, I began to read Chernyshevsky's What is to be Done. In the evening, he often left the tent and inspected the camp. The wind intensified. The edge of the ice began to break. We have to keep an eye on both sides, lest under great pressure the field give a new big crack. It's not safe. Pedro went to start another turntable. Today is a very interesting drift. We were carried back to the northeast. Shall we return to the 88th parallel? Zhenya wrote an article for the newspaper Komsomolskaya Pravda about our radio station, how it was made and how it works. He notes that the station operates flawlessly. Ernst puts the kitchen in order and rents it out to me for 15 days. Until August 15 I am on duty in the galley, as they say in the Navy. So, July, the summer month of the Arctic, has already passed. What has this month brought us? Two periods can be noted in our drift. The last decade of May was characterized by an average speed of ice movement of 4 miles per day. The direction of drift was mainly south, along the Greenwich meridian in June and July. The speed dropped to 1.5 miles per day. In July, the snow cover melted, the thickness of which reached 40 centimeters. Large lakes of fresh water were formed. In this month, Fedorov began to study magnetic variations. Shirshov took 5 hydrological stations. In the last 10 days of July, we noted a noticeable development of plant plankton in the upper layers of the sea. Apparently, the hydrobiological spring has come. August 1. The night passed restlessly. Ernst was on duty in the camp. At midnight, he handed over to Rudolph Island another meteorological report and Zhenya's large correspondence for Komsomolskaya Pravda. All this time our watchman and friend Vesely was constantly barking anxiously. But Ernst paid no attention to this, for Vesely had become in the habit of barking at the windmill when it was turning, or at the birds that very rarely, but nevertheless flew past us. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Ernst got out of the tent to see what was happening in the yard, and suddenly shouted in a desperate voice, "Get up quickly, 3 bears have come." At this time, Pepe, Zhenya and I were lying in the bags, fast asleep. Awakened by Teodorich, we dressed in 3 counts faster than the soldiers in Nitzer's barracks when they were woken up by a sergeant major, and Ernst had already run out into the street with a rifle. When I took my rifle and jumped out after him, I saw that from the first shot of Teodorich, the bears, like a good 3, began to run, scattering water splashes. Go catch them. It turned out that we were visited by a bear with 2 cubs. The 4 of us tried to catch up with them. I untied Vesely. He rushed after the bears at the speed of a courier train, caught up with the furry guests and began to bark around them. But by the time we ran up, the bears had already disappeared. On the way back, Ernst slipped, fell and took full boots of water. It was a small pleasure, but Teodorich was so excited by the bear's visit that he did not feel the water squelching between his fingers with every step. We've forgotten how to hunt. I broke the silence as we walked back to our homes, disappointed by our failure. Yes, Shirshov replied, it would be nice to eat fresh bear meat now. I remember that during the trip on the Krasin, we were once fed with bear meat. It was quite tasty, but for some reason the meat was very salty. They don't know how to cook it on ships, Eugene said. Well, our Dmitrievich would have cooked it well, Petrovich remarked. If Teodorich hadn't interfered with his shouts and shot, the bears would be lying at our tent now. I answered. Krenkel was not offended by this remark, but decided to provide a theoretical basis for his unsuccessful hunt. We live here, he said, not for hunting, but for science. You, Petya, should be interested not in fresh bear meat here, but in the very fact that the bear visited us. This is already a whole scientific discovery. So, long live science and down with hunting. Teodorich finished his brief speech. We all laughed, and I was very glad that Ernst stopped talking about the unsuccessful hunt with his joke. Today's visit to the camp by bears finally convinced the pass of the mistake of Fridtjof Nansen's opinion about the absence of life in the high latitudes of the central polar basin. During our drift from the North Pole, that is, for 2 months and 10 days we have already seen 5 fulmars from the seagull breed, 2 snow buntings, and today a female bear with 2 cubs. This is especially indicative, since we have no doubt that the female gave birth to them here. On the drifting ice, bears need to feed. Their food is sea animals. It means that there are seals here. The presence of living beings in the heart of the central polar basin can be considered firmly established. We did not sleep all night while talking. We did not even notice how the time came to transmit the meteorological report to Rudolph Island. It was about 6 o'clock in the morning, and Zhenya went to make observations. Then Ernst knocked out a report and a small telegram to Pravda about our nocturnal guests. Pyotr Petrovich and I climbed into sleeping bags, tried to sleep, but nothing worked. I got out and went to prepare breakfast. He treated the brothers to scrambled eggs from fresh eggs. We had breakfast with pleasure. August began with a stormy wind. The weather is again vile. The wind is strong. Its gusts sometimes reach a speed of 12 meters per second, and then the Tikka windmill folds. Rain and snow penetrate into all the cracks. The wind tore apart the tent where Zhenya conducts his observations on gravity. My wife had to move all the appliances to the living tent until the wind subsided. Together with Petrovich, he began to compile a telegram on the results of scientific observations. In a telegram of 1,000 words, it was necessary to tell about scientific observations in meteorology, astronomy, magnetology, gravitation, hydrobiology, hydrology especially on drift. I checked the meat base. I cut through the ice with a knife, took out the meat from the refrigerator, the hind leg. It began to deteriorate. I had to shave it with a knife on all sides as a result of this operation. The leg was halved. Still, even after that, the meat continued to emit a bad smell. Although not as strong as before when I took it out, but quite palpable. There is nothing to do, we will have to use it in this form. We really miss fresh meat. I called our sanitary Dr. Pyotr Petrovich. He has a good sense of smell. He examined the meat from all sides, winced slightly, but nevertheless came to the conclusion that it was still possible to eat. Then I cut the meat into pieces and began to grind the minced meat for cutlets in a meat grinder. I stuffed more onions, garlic and pepper there to knock off the smell. In the evening I lowered the spinner to a depth of 400 meters to study the drift. Today is an exceptional day. We are quickly carried to the north, then to the northeast. The speed of drift reaches 21 kilometers and a day. We have not noted such a rapid pace of movement of our ice floe since the day of landing at the pole. Tomorrow, if there is sunshine, Genya will make an astronomical determination, and we will know exactly where we are. 1 o'clock in the morning. Ernst sends a large telegram to Rudolph Island. Pyotr Petrovich works with the turntable. We received a welcome telegram from Moscow, from the participants of the International Geological Congress. August 2. There are many telegrams for us on Dixon, but the shortwave communication between Dixon and Rudolph has deteriorated, and the telegrams are delayed. It's a pity. After lunch, everyone gathered in the tent and smoked. Ernst tuned into the Comintern radio station. In long wars, there was exceptionally good audibility. We all put on headphones and listened to the evening broadcast of Poslednye Izvestia on the radio, directly from Moscow. We were delighted with a poem by two pioneers that was broadcast during a children's radio program. In these poems, the children regret that their young age does not allow them to touch the Earth's axis. Yet children want to explore the white spots. They even agree to wait a little until they grow up. The verses end with the words, "We agree to wait, but you leave Syriza and me at least one stain. We are afraid that soon there will be no blank spots at all. Therefore, we will advise Sergei and his friend to diligently study to become the head of the North Pole Air Terminal. Today we have determined our new coordinates. We return to the 88th parallel. In 2 days we were carried back north in a curve of 11 miles, a straight line of 8 miles. Our last coordinates were 87 degrees 53 minutes north latitude and 7 degrees west longitude. Now 88 degrees 01 minutes north latitude and 3 degrees west longitude. It is very good that our drift in the southern direction is somewhat delayed. The farther south the ice floe is, the more openings there will be. The more dangerous it is for our camp. There is no doubt that if the wind had been blowing from the north, we would have been blown south in a straight line not for 8 miles, but much more. Easily broke free from the chain. This is a surprisingly cunning dog. As soon as you start putting the collar on it, it inflates so much that a finger barely passes between the neck and the strap. And after a while you look, Beasley's head freely climbs out of the collar. Genya moved the gravitational observatory to a new place and installed the instruments. Petya lowered the plankton net to various depths with the help of a winch, catching microscopic inhabitants of the Arctic Ocean. Then he examined his catch under a microscope for a long time. I climbed into the bag, but something could not sleep. I was nauseous. I think it's from sausages. I can't even look at them now. Pyotr Petrovich too, but Genya and Ernst are happy to eat our portions of sausages, and also praise us. This afternoon the weather was very good, calm, and the sun was shining. We took a few pictures. Later, we were going to take photos again, but suddenly fog came, the sun hid, and our plans were thwarted. August 3. I sat down to write a diary. I suffered all night. My head hurt brutally. I had to take pyramidin powders. He fell asleep only at 4 o'clock, and then not for long. Sunny, clear weather set in. Genya sat down for a day to observe magnetic variations. Pyotr Petrovich managed to pull out the turntable even before morning tea. He and I decided to make a sortie, take a good look at our crevasse, go around a large area in a kayak and shoot interesting places with a camera, for which Krenkel loaded the Kinamo. Pyotr Petrovich and I harnessed ourselves to the straps and dragged the sled with the kayak. Ernst took pictures of us twice. The shots will probably be successful. As we approached the crack, I noticed a huge head sticking out of the water. It was a bearded seal weighing 20 pounds. We are all delighted. Here is another physical proof of the existence of life in the center of the polar basin. Thus, The old theories about the extreme poverty of flora and fauna in the central part of the basin have been finally refuted. The presence of algae gives the ice a red and yellow color. A small jellyfish was caught earlier. We noted that seagulls and navels flew to visit us. After the bears came to us, we asked ourselves, what do they eat? Now the meeting with the bearded seal confirmed our conclusions. The central polar basin is not a dead desert. Both in the sea and on the ice floe, life is everywhere. We lowered the kayak into the water, got into it with Petrovich and went, and the bearded seal would emerge and disappear. We hid in every possible way, lying in wait for him to shoot him, but to no avail. The crevasse through which we swam is as big as a river. Its narrowest point is 30 meters, the widest is 70. On the banks of this river there are large ice floes. The hare appeared to us several times in different places, but far away. We took a lot of pictures. On the way back, we saw an overturned ice floe. There was a lot of algae on it. We stopped the kayak and looked closely. Pyotr Petrovich carefully scraped them into parchment paper with a knife. He will examine this polar vegetation under a microscope. Then they returned to the ice floe with this prey. Although the hare was not caught, Petya enriched his hydrobiological museum. The sled with the kayak was left 100 meters from the crevasse. Tomorrow we will go again to track down our bunny. After lunch, we listened with pleasure to the latest news on the radio from Moscow and a program for the Red Army. Now I will finish writing my diary, climb into the bag and read Chernyshevsky's What is to be Done. The temperature dropped to 2 degrees cold. I was glad that the snow would melt less now. We are very disgusted with the water, although we know that when the frost comes, we will remember it with sadness. We will have to spend a lot of work extracting water from the snow to cook dinner and wash dishes. Pyotr Petrovich came at about 1 o'clock in the morning. He also lowered the turntable to determine the drift. August 4. He went to track down the bearded beard. Several times he fell through between hummocks. Lactic did not appear, and this hunting walk did not bring any result. The hare seemed to sense that he was being followed, and disappeared. Krenkel moved the tent with technical equipment to another place. They were engaged in the transportation of equipment stowed in a utility tent, so we changed the location of our pole town almost every day, trying to choose the most advantageous place. Protected from water, it is impossible to protect yourself from the wind on an ice floe. Genya fell asleep immediately after lunch. He worked 35 hours in a row. In the morning, he made another astronomical determination. We were again carried 4 miles to the north. August 5th. I got up and got dressed instantly, since there was underwear, and it was quite cool in the tent. Today I experienced great sadness. Examining the refrigerator, he dug up a cave where meat and fish lie. As soon as I opened it, a heavy smell of decay and rot hit my nose. I gave up. All our hopes for fresh meat supplies were immediately dashed. It was the sun's rays penetrating through the thickness of the ice that damaged our food resources. The fish lying in the depths of the cave has become soft, but does not have a foul smell. I took out the meat, cleaned it with a knife. It began to smell less. I tamped the meat with pieces of ice. Maybe we can still use something. I was worried about the condition of the 100 kilograms of veal buried in the nearby refrigerator. I ran there. For a long time he wielded a foot. It turned out that after external cleaning, the meat can be eaten. Of course, if it were on the shelf in a butcher store, then any sanitary inspector would forbid it to sell, but in our conditions it will do. We have a sanitary doctor, one of our own. He will agree. And if he does not give his consent immediately, then we will persuade. Although our stomachs do not react very well to such food, there is nothing to be done. Meat is very important to us as an anti-scorbutic agent. As for the smell, we have tried and trusted spices to combat it. Bay leaves, onions, garlic and pepper in such quantities that it hurts the throat with emery when eating. This is my invention, approved by all the inhabitants of the North Pole Station, even Beasley, who, strange as it may seem, eats spicy food with great pleasure. For lunch today we had fish soup, fried fish and tea. A decent portion of fish soup was left for tomorrow, since I cooked it immediately, almost half a bucket. The dampness in the tent was very much felt, and Ernst suggested that we set up a Primus stove for at least an hour. Indeed, it helped. It became warmer and more pleasant. We even reached for books, took up reading during a short leisure. Petrovich worked all day on the winch, making a complete hydrological station to a depth of 1,000 meters. In addition, he lowered the turntable 4 times. I told Shirshov that I had seen an ice floe with algae again. He went to this place on skis, collected algae there, and now carefully examines them in his laboratory. 6 August. Before lunch, I made parts of a new device from tin, which Zhenya decided to use to register the direction of the wind. A northwest wind began to blow, which drives our ice floe to the southeast. Like milestones, a pinwheel counts down the miles, lowered into the depths of the ocean. We definitely don't like this rapid journey to the south. The ice is unfriendly there. With the onset of cold weather, it becomes more difficult for Petrovich to work. All day long he has to heat water to pour over the freezing mechanisms of the carcasses. Ernst, Zhenya and I were putting the wind turbine in order. Now it charges the battery smoothly and well. The wind is intensifying, and Krenkel is therefore in a festive mood. At dinner we drank 40 grams of vodka. It was Zhenya who saved for us when he distilled cognac into alcohol for scientific purposes. We listened to a very good report on the radio about the preparations for the elections to the Supreme Soviet of the USSR. Only our Petrovich did not manage to listen, as he was constantly working with the turntable, watching the interesting drift. At night, when we go to bed, I will tell him in detail everything that we learned on the radio today. The soul rejoices when you look at how well Zhenya and Petrovich work. They do not reckon with difficulties or time. They try to do as much as possible, checking each scientific observation 3 times. Treat everything with genuine diligence and perseverance. Time flies so fast that we do not notice the passing days. It's even a pity that they are so short. However, there is nothing to be done about it. Over 24 hours you can't carve out a minute extra from the day. August 7. Again he suffered all night. He had a headache. He could not sleep. In the morning, Zhenya was engaged in processing the materials of astronomical observations, and Pyotr Petrovich conducted helicopter research. In the meantime, I was gluing our utility tent with percale, which was badly battered by the wind. Having finished this work, I went to the crack. Again I stood for a long time and waited for the beard to appear, but he was obviously more cunning than me. I checked what material is suitable for wicks. Soon I will start making kerosene stoves, and there are no wide wicks in our stocks of household equipment. He inserted a sock of pure wool cut into ribbons into the lamp. Such a wick burns very well. Cloth is worse. It contains a lot of paper. He informed the brothers about a new invention: use all old woolen stockings on wicks. It's midnight. Petrovich is still working with the turntable. A strong drift has begun, and Shirshov wants to trace the speed at which the ice floe is being carried away. Now we are approaching our homeland with every hour, although there are still many thousands of kilometers of unexplored path to Moscow, and the very method of our movement can in no way be considered stereotyped and tested. Good. The ice does not bother us. The wind does not break our field. When we find ourselves even closer to our dear motherland, we will be more pleased. Although in those areas we will face considerable difficulties. The farther south, the rarefier the ice. Maybe our ice floe feels this and resists in every possible way, unexpectedly changing the southern direction to the northeast or northwest. August 8. I make a tin tank to connect to lamps, one large one. Previously, there was only enough fuel for lamps for 6 hours of burning, but now it will be enough for around the clock. It is very inconvenient for me to work. There is no table, no workbench. You do everything on your own knees. Which replaced the vise, I clamp a piece of tin with my feet and cut it off with a hacksaw. We drank tea together with Zhenya. Ernst was asleep after a night shift. Petrovich was again busy with helicopter research. He worked all day at the crevasse, observing the currents that arise in the upper layers of the sea and are associated with the drift of the ice. Petrovich returned only late in the evening. In the morning, Zhenya sat down to process the materials of magnetic and astronomical observations. Astronomical definitions are the basis for the study of drift. To make a detailed drift map, it is desirable to have as many of them as possible. Therefore, Zhenya catches the sun every time it shows itself from behind the clouds. This is what Fedorov is doing now. I'm very sad. I believe that this is a consequence of my poor physical condition. I have nausea, saliva flows, my head in the morning is heavy, like tin. I try not to show it, but the brothers notice everything themselves. Sometimes I feel so bad that I think my business is bad. Yesterday we all sent correspondence to the newspapers. Ernst and I to Pravda, Zhenya to Komsomolskaya Pravda, Pyotr Petrovich to Leningradskaya Pravda. The weather is getting worse. The dampness has finally tormented us. August 9th. At 4:30 in the morning, Ernst woke Petrovich and congratulated him. Shershov's daughter had been born the day before. The radio brought this news to our ice floe. Petya is worried about his wife, about her health. An hour later, an additional message came. The daughter was born excellent, weighing 10 pounds. Shershov's wife was doing well. Petrovich is in a joyful mood. After tea, I continued to work, bending, soldering and drilling in aluminum cork. However, this lesson had to be interrupted, as the brothers wanted to have lunch. I went to the kitchen, heated up the rest of the fish soup, added water and salt, as the fish soup was too thick. For the second, I cooked peas for yesterday's meat cutlets. For the third, we had tea with dry compote. Genya made another astronomical determination. We crossed the 88th parallel for the third time, this time to the south again. The speed of drift increased. When they received our coordinates on Rudolph Island today, they even gasped in surprise that we were being carried so quickly to the south. Petrovich is so busy processing materials on helicopter observations that he does not even have the opportunity to write an article for the newspaper Izvestia. He is its correspondent. The editors sent him polite reminders one after another. I went to the kitchen, soldering the tank for the lamp. Now everything is ready, except for the legs. In the evening we gathered in the tent, brought teas and cake. Everyone congratulated Petrovich on the newborn. He sat beaming. 10 August. After breakfast, in the morning, we began a full hydrological station. Petrovich, having repaired the cable, took samples from the upper horizons. Then he lowered for bathymeters to a depth of 2,000 meters. The wind has intensified. Its speed reaches 16 meters per second. Our drift therefore accelerated even more. The cable with bathymeters was driven under the ice. Hydrological work had to be suspended, for bathymeters were left hanging at a depth under the ice. It is not yet possible to pull them out. Wait for the drift to slow down. Eugene prepared his instruments for gravitational observations, but the wind tore the edges of his tent and, in order to save the devices, Genya had to lie flat on the jars and boxes. We carefully covered the devices with plywood, put a load on it and only after that calmed down. It is snowing wetly. It plasters my eyes. Afraid of getting wet, we hide in the residential palace. Petrovich walks around gloomy. For the third day it is impossible to make a hydrological station, and it's time to measure the depth, since we are being carried quickly. Genya must prepare for gravitational observations, but all plans are thwarted due to stormy winds. Shershov assures that he heard how the bathymeters touched the meridian of Greenwich. In the morning I fixed the stakes in the kitchen so that the wind would not blow away our galley, and began to cook for 2 days at once, since today and tomorrow we all have to turn the winch. The foreign Swedish Primus stove was clogged. I cleaned it with a needle. A gasoline jet appeared in the capsule, and the Primus stove ignited. The tent was laced tightly so that the strong wind would not bring snow into the soup and porridge. While I was unlacing the tent, half of it was already on fire. The top was also burning. I wrapped a rag around my hands, grabbed the burning Primus stove and threw it out of the tent into the snow. He got off cheaply. He only burned his hands. It hurts very much when I wash them in the water. For lunch, we still managed to cook. In the afternoon, everyone gathered in the kitchen, had lunch and went to the living tent to smoke. She is covered in furs here. As Ernst says, it is quite cozy in addition. The temperature in the tent is +2 degrees. We were lying on the bellows, and our whole palace was trembling in the wind. Genya nevertheless made another meteorological observation, but in order not to damage the instruments, it has closed its scientific observatories for today, lowering the guy ropes of the tents. Eugene pressed down his offices with sleds, but now you don't have to be afraid of the wind. We left the tent and saw something black in the distance near the crack. Genya decided that it was a walrus, but when we came closer, it turned out that it was a clipper boat that had been torn off the groove by the wind and turned over. We carried him to the base and pressed him tightly to the cables. In the evening I made tea. Ernst went to bed. Petrovich and I made reinforced stretchers for the living tent. The wind has shaken our home, and the damned blizzard does not even think of calming down. When we left the tent, we put on raincoats. The snow is clogged behind the collar, in fur shirts. We got wet quickly, and there was nowhere to dry. Drying is the most bottleneck of our expedition. If possible, we try not to stand outside for a long time during rain and sleet. As soon as our suits get wet, we change them for others. We are afraid of colds. With such a strong wind, you need to be on the alert. Trouble can take you by surprise. Teodorich is on duty in the camp. My soul hurts. The economy of our bases is covered with snow. As soon as the wind subsides, we will have to go to dig out from under the snow all the property brought here to the North Pole from the mainland. It is necessary to build a hydrological station, measure the depth, conduct gravitational observations, but we postpone all work until tomorrow. hoping that the wind will finally subside. At midnight, Ernst Teodorovich walked around the camp. He came back and said, "You walk, and it seems that the tents are about to burst from the wind." Pyotr Petrovich could not sleep. He stood up and processed the materials of his observations. Then he put a manganese compress on my hands to reduce the pain after the burn, and bandaged it. He wrote his diary with bandaged hands. August 11th. The night passed in anxiety and tension. Although it seemed that everyone was asleep, and only Ernst Teodorovich was on duty, in fact we were all awake in sleeping bags. Our tent was shaking violently, the wind was humming in the antenna. You lie down and think, it's good if new cracks don't appear on the ice floe, if the water doesn't go to the bases or to one of our tents. However, those tents where we live and where the radio is installed, we will have time to save. The main thing is to preserve the materials of scientific observations. The kitchen, despite the fact that I strengthened it well, tilted to the side, that is, pressed with one side to the ice floe. We had breakfast, tea with lemon and caviar. It's a pity that there is no soft bread, and there are no crackers, so that the brothers did not get sad due to the lack of breadcrumbs. I kneaded a full can of dough and began to fry the biscuits. I think that they will be enough for 2 or 3 days. He fussed until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then cooked dinner. Still, I was convinced, in order to sit patiently for 5 hours at the burning Primus stoves, you must first of all undergo training in hell. I sit on the barrel, and the Primus stove hums at my feet, and so for hours. Only housewives can understand my condition, although they have never experienced such inconveniences. We gathered in the kitchen and had lunch. I put away the dishes, closed the tent, and we went to the residential palace to smoke. Petrovich processed the materials of helicopter observations. The drift is still going fast. There is no way to pull out stuck bathymeters from a depth of 2,000 meters. This worries Shirshov and all of us. An ice floe can rush through the 87th parallel, and we will not have time to make a hydrological station at this latitude. How we have to think about every hour of our life on an ice floe. All the expeditions of the past could not answer even the simplest questions of science related to ice drift in the central polar basin. All the activity, all the efforts of the researchers were spent on passing between hummocky ice, on safe navigation. They couldn't think of anything else, and we must. Genya spent the whole day processing materials on magnetic variations. Twice the sun peeked out for a short time. Still, it does not forget us. Genya managed to make an astronomical determination. It turned out that our ice floe had traveled 10 miles in one day. We live in a tense state, but no one has fear of unhappiness. Everyone has only one fear, that scientific works will not disappear. Everyone has only one dream, and we think and talk about it all the time, lest our research work fail. We need to sit on the ice floe until spring at the cost of any effort. We know that the 6-month polar night is not entirely pleasant. It is especially difficult to be on the ice during the polar night during severe frosts, but everyone is determined to endure at all costs, to make as many scientific observations as possible. I went to bed, and Genya continued to process the materials. Pyotr Petrovich also processed the results of research, and then began to write an article in his Vestia. Our dog, cheerful in such a strong wind and in wet snow, no longer looks like a merry one, but has turned into a pitiful, unhappy animal. He is curled up and does not even ask for food. We had to move him to a sheltered place and set up behind the tent, where the wind was quieter. As soon as we moved him there, the dog immediately reminded us that he was still jolly. He came to life. He was imported. Teodorovich woke up. He had been resting before his duty. He saw that we were not in the tent, and was about to get out of the sleeping bag, thinking something had happened on the ice floe. But when he heard our voices, he calmed down and continued to lie in the bag. He says that you won't be able to sleep for a long time because your nerves are pumped up. You listen to the wind all the time. I understand him well. We all have the same tense state. It is surprising how Teodorovich rests. He lies with his eyes closed, as if he is asleep, and he himself hears everything. In the evening I wrote an article in Pravda about the results of 3 months of work on the ice floe. I received a telegram from my beloved native Volodichka that she was going to Yessentuki for treatment from August 15th. I am glad that she will rest. I worry about her all the time. Here, on the ice floe, I think very little about myself. Her health worries me more. I want her to get better and stronger. Our dog, cheerful in such a strong wind and in wet snow, no longer looks like a merry one, but has turned into a pitiful, unhappy animal. He is curled up and does not even ask for food. We had to move him to a sheltered place and set up behind the tent, where the wind was quieter. As soon as we moved him there, the dog immediately reminded us that he was still jolly. He came to life. He was imported. Teodorich woke up. He had been resting before his duty. He saw that we were not in the tent and was about to get out of the sleeping bag, thinking something had happened on the Ice Floe. But when he heard our voices, he calmed down and continued to lie in the bag. He says that you won't be able to sleep for a long time because your nerves are pumped up. You listen to the wind all the time. I understand him well. We all have the same tense state. It is surprising how Teodorich rests. He lies with his eyes closed, as if he is asleep, and he himself hears everything. In the evening I wrote an article in Pravda about the results of 3 months of work on the Ice Floe. I received a telegram from my beloved native Volodichka that she was going to Yessentuki for treatment from August 15th. I am glad that she will rest. I worry about her all the time. Here, on the Ice Floe, I think very little about myself. Her health worries me more. I want her to get better and stronger. We will rush even faster, Petrovich predicts. Teodorich received a large radiogram. A competition was announced among Soviet radio amateurs. Which of them would reliably contact Krenkel? A radio receiver is promised as a bonus. I cooked dinner. After lunch, we decided to rest. I especially persuaded Teodorich to sleep, since he would have to work hard at night. From Rudolph Island we were informed that Levanevsky's 4-engine plane was flying from Moscow to Alaska and we had to keep an eye on it. Ernst did not sleep all night until morning and then all day. He listened to the radio station of Levanevsky's plane. I brought tea to Teodorich, as he was constantly busy. Our drift has weakened a little. The cable can already be chosen. I woke Petrovich up to go to the winch. Shirshov had just gone to bed, and he really did not want to get out of his sleeping bag. After grumbling a little, he quickly stood up. The two of us went to the hole to choose a cable from the depths of the Arctic Ocean. 13 August. Despite the fact that I went to bed only at 5 o'clock in the morning, I could not sleep for a long time. 2 hours later, I got out of the bag to ask where Levanevsky's plane was. We again had a faint hope that this third transpolar plane would turn towards us, and Levanevsky would drop the burners for the Primus stoves that we had requested. Letters from relatives and newspapers. Petrovich continued to build a complete hydrological station. I boiled the tea, offered it to Teodorich, but he did not want to drink it. Then I made him coffee and took it to the radio room. After breakfast, Genya set up a tent, preparing for gravitational observations. I repaired the Primus, then cooked dinner. Almost every 5 minutes I ran to the radio station, asking if I could hear anything from Levanevsky. Ernst invariably replied that the plane was going in difficult conditions, with strong headwinds, the speed of which reached 100 kilometers per hour. The windows of the cockpit of the plane are covered with frost, Krenkel says, and quickly writes this message in the radio log. Then we find out that the plane is flying over the North Pole. It was difficult for us to get it, Levanevsky said. We know that this is a difficult path, especially in clouds and headwinds. Soon we learned that the plane's right-wing engine had failed. We are going on 3 very hard. We are going in solid clouds. They transmitted from the plane. This message pierced everyone like an electric current. We realized that the situation was very serious. If such a steadfast, reasonable and experienced pilot as Levanevsky radioed about this, then, therefore, it is very difficult for the crew. Everyone felt such pain, as if something had broken in their souls. I made Ernst coffee so that he would not fall asleep, since Teodorich had been sitting in the radio room with headphones for the 2nd day. By this time, Genya had set up a tent and all his gravity devices. Tomorrow morning, he will begin a daily series of observations. Petrovich lowered for bathymeters to a depth of 4,000 meters. Soon he came to dinner and said, "We'll rest a little, then we'll start pulling out the bathymeters." We were preoccupied, sat in the tent in silence and smoked. Then I stood up and said, "Well, Petrovich, let's go pump up the separation." This is how we jokingly call our manual hydrological winch, with the help of which we raise bathymeters. It was already late in the evening, from Levanevsky. No more messages were received. This silence greatly agitated and disturbed us, but we continued to work. We think that he continues to fly ahead on 3 engines, and his radio station has soured, as happened to Vodopyanov's plane when we landed at the North Pole. Ernst sits at the radio and listens tirelessly, persistently, attentively. Petrovich and I went to choose bathymeters from the ocean. Genya came to our aid, since it is very difficult for her to turn the winch without a change. Then I brought a can of food and a box of butter from the base. The three of us had a little snack. Teodorich did not take off his headphones and could not join us. Every 5 to 6 hours, I make coffee, and I wear Ernsta. He looks tired. He is about to fall off his feet. Everyone is in such a heavy, excited mood that, of course, there is no time for sleep. I wanted to finish the article to Pravda, which he had started the day before. But half an hour later he was back on his feet. A message came from Moscow that the radio station of Levanevsky's plane was under surveillance. Ernst was asked to watch the emergency wave. Maybe the plane has landed on the ice. And now its emergency radio station is working. I went to the tent, but, of course, I had no time for sleep and no rest. I got up again and returned to the radio station. Genya and Petrovich also lay for a long time and could not sleep. 14 August. We slept very little, and, as if by agreement, everyone went to the radio station. Teodorich is still sitting with headphones at the radio table and listening. Will the signals of Levanevsky's plane appear? At 7 o'clock in the morning, we listened to the latest news on the radio. We found out that Levanevsky did not report anything. My heart became sad and anxious, where to look for him. But we do not lose hope. They asked the radio operators of Rudolph Island to give Teodorich the opportunity to put him to bed. At least for 2 or 3 hours. He is pale and exhausted without sleep. True, Krenkel is a hardy man, but sleep overwhelms him too. On Rudolph Island, they agreed. They will keep a close watch and will not call us until a certain hour. Genya made an astronomical definition, but he does not have free time to count. Therefore, we are guided by the old coordinates. Taking advantage of the good weather, Genya conducts gravitational observations. He does not leave the devices all day. Petrovich builds up the cable and repairs the places of old cliffs. He devotes the whole evening to this activity. We are all now trying to work even harder. But as soon as the moment of rest comes, we start talking about Levanevsky. We get nervous, and this is not very useful on an ice floe. Let us not have a single free minute. But during the work the condition of the brothers will not worsen. I dismantled the warehouse. Before the snowstorm, we covered it with percale. But, despite this, a lot of snow accumulated in our militsa, personal backpacks and for things. I cleared everything and laid it out on the ice, like in a shop window. Taking advantage of the appearance of the sun, he dried things. Then he cooked dinner and made coffee for Teodorich again. He says that coffee helps him stay awake. We are all very concerned about the situation of Levanevsky's plane. Petrovich's hands were swollen from working on the winch. Frankly speaking, we did not expect that the winch would exhaust us so much. Hydrologists, obviously, have no idea, says Petya, how difficult it is for us to obtain every water sample or measure the depth. Of course, you have to do everything by hand, I said. But the most unpleasant thing is that you sometimes have to take a water sample twice, to be sure of the result of the research. When I return to Moscow, Shershev jokes, I must always walk bent over. So often we bend our backs in front of the winch, twisting the cable. Krenkel disagreed. By the time we get to the mainland, he said, there will be a complete straightening of the back. And we will even forget that there were such difficult days. I can't forget that, Shershev objected. Then he was silent for a moment and for some reason remembered. It's a pity we didn't take a soccer ball with us. Maybe we could snatch time for sports. Genya laughed. I imagined Dmitrik in the role of a goalkeeper. We would have to order for panties specially, and invite bears to replenish the teams. We were forced to stop our sports conversations, as Krenkel tuned into the Comintern station. The Sledny Izvestia Po radio has just reported that heroes of the Soviet Union Vodokinov, Molokov and Alexeyev, who participated in an air expedition to the North Pole, are flying out to search for Levanevsky's plane. Fog is approaching. Obviously, it will snow. 15 August. We live in a tense state. Teodorich sits around the clock and listens to see if the voice of Levanevsky's plane flashes on the air. But at the same time, we do not stop making scientific observations, for which we were sent here, to the Ice Floe. On August 14th, our coordinates were 87 degrees 14 minutes latitude and 0 degrees longitude. And today they are 87 degrees 10 minutes latitude and 0 degrees 03 minutes longitude. Thus, with no wind, we still covered about 4 miles in a day. It has been finally clarified. I think this is a great contribution to science. That drift does not depend only on the wind. Putting on skis and taking binoculars. I went to the crack to check the condition of the clipper boat. Our legs were covered with a thin crust of ice. I returned to the camp and helped Petrovich pull out the turntable. He has been busy with helicopter observations since the morning. He has already made 2 episodes. They lowered the load to the bottom, and I went to cook dinner. Although it is my turn and Teodorich has to take over the duties of cook from me, I continue to prepare dinners, since Krenkel is always busy at the radio station. Pyotr Petrovich came and said, "The depth is solid, 4,354 meters." Teodoric received a radiogram for me. Moscow is inquiring about the state of our airfield. We went on skis to inspect all the best parts of the ice floe. Went in different directions for several kilometers. The results are far from comforting. There are a lot of hillocks, hummocks, puddles. Late in the evening, they made an answer. The surface of the old playground is ruined, but within 5 days we can prepare airfields 500 and 700 meters long. In different directions, with the freezing of puddles, the size will increase. The cover is strong. We recommend landing on wheels. We ask you to bring 10 ampoules of normal water for analysis. Chemically pure hyposulfite 500 grams, kerosene wick stoves, 3 lamps and 30 lines, fruits, vegetables and Tschaikowski's oceanography. Then we went to the hydrological winch to pull the cargo from the bottom of the ocean. They worked continuously until 1 in the morning. Hungry. I made tea, and all 4 of us gathered in a living tent. The winch is exhausting for 3 hours of continuous work. It is quite difficult to turn it. But we no longer think about the difficulties, since everyone got involved. And this is the most important thing. We are here to enrich science with new observations, and therefore we do not reckon with any difficulties. We went to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning. Ernst Teodorovich must continue to listen until morning. I look at him with pain. He worked with us on the winch. Then I ate only a piece of sausage over tea. From fatigue, overwork and systematic restriction in food during these days, he only drank coffee. He began to vomit. Instead of going to bed, he nevertheless went to the radio table, put on headphones and continued his work, listening to Levanevsky's plane. After tea, Petrovich continued to conduct helicopter observations and worked all night until 8 o'clock in the morning. He was also very tired and exhausted. I barely got to the tent, climbed into my sleeping bag. Before I knew it, he was asleep. We have to work a lot here, a lot. 16 August. We received a detailed report from the government commission on the measures to search for Levanevsky's plane. Our ice floe is supposed to be turned into an airbase. The intention is good, but difficult to implement. We are surrounded by stirred ice fields. Our 4 pairs of hands are not enough. In addition, autumn is approaching, and with it the rapid onset of darkness. But we will be able to organize a weather service and a radio communication service. It is in our power. Here we will be able to be useful to our polar pilots. With pain in my soul I think about our Soviet aviators, who, perhaps, found themselves in serious trouble. Having finally handed over the meteorological report, Ernst decided to go to bed. I got up and, taking a sled and a gun, went after the clipper boat, since the possibility of a sudden compression of the ice is not excluded. And then we will be left without a rubber boat. He made his way through floating ice and openings. He dragged the sled on himself. It was not possible to drive over cracks 50 to 70 meters wide in a kayak. They were covered with a thin crust of ice. I pulled out the clipper boat, put it on a sled, photographed it and took it to the camp. Now I calmed down. Our clipper boat is safe. I prepared lunch. Pea soup for the first course, buckwheat porridge for the second, and tea with dry compote for the third. We had a hearty lunch. From morning to evening, Genio was constantly busy with gravitational observations. After lunch, Petrovich made observations with 2 helicopters over the currents and the drift. Yesterday he thought that the second turntable, lowered to a depth of 400 meters, did not work, and checked it several times. Today he has already accurately established the reasons for the capricious behavior of the turntable. This is a very interesting phenomenon that no one has observed. It turns out that after the rapid drift of the ice, there is a reverse current, which he discovered at a depth of 50 to 75 meters. If such a miracle could happen, and our ice floe sank 50 meters deep, I can imagine how good we would feel there. Then we would swim back and soon found ourselves at the North Pole again. After lunch, we went into the tent to smoke and rest. Then Petya again worked with turntables, studying the currents. And I took a shovel, an axe, a gun, a camera and went on skis to make an airfield. Now we must be ready to receive heavy aircraft that may fly to us. This is a large and difficult operation to clear the airfield of hummocks, hillocks and other obstacles. After working for 4 hours, he was very tired. Since it was inconvenient to cut the ice on foot alone, put it on the sled and take it aside. During the work on cleaning the airfield, I bent down to cold puddles and drank water many times. I used to do this on warm days when hunting. It was very hot. I took off my fur vest and cloth tunic, but the sweat was pouring down like hail. I returned to the camp and made tea. It was already midnight. I decided to go to bed early so that in a few hours I could get up and go to work at the airfield. For the third day we have good weather. There have not been such days for more than a month. Previously, fogs, winds, snow did not leave us, but now the soul will not rejoice. It is quiet and sunny. It's just a pity that there is no opportunity to engage in a political circle. In connection with the search for Levanevsky's plane, we are busy all the time. Krenkel at the radio station. Genya and Petrovich are constantly conducting scientific observations. There is little time left for sleep. 17 August. I didn't manage to fall asleep. When we have good weather, it is pleasant for life and soul. But Ernst begins to feel sad during calm weather, looks anxiously at the batteries, sighs and saves every word during the radio transmission. That's why we decided to recharge the batteries a little at night. We did not go to bed with Theodorik, we worked all night. After a little rest in the morning, I went to work at the airfield at noon. When I left, Pyotr Petrovich was still asleep. He worked with turntables until morning. He was woken up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Petrovich got up and went to continue his helicopter observations. As soon as I reached the airfield site, the weather began to deteriorate. A strong wind blew. It became dark, and fog approached. The sun disappeared, which warmed us for 3 days and gave us vigor. Theodorich hurriedly started the windmill. I returned to the camp at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and cooked dinner. After lunch, I washed the dishes. Ernst put on his headphones. He continues to listen to Levanevsky's plane on the radio station. Petrovich went to the hole to work. Genya conducts daily observations of magnetic variations, and will be continuously busy until noon on August 18th. I put our pharmacy in order. I equipped a special box for her, in which we used to have sweets. Now our pharmacy will hang in the tent, and Petrovich will move his hydrochemical laboratory to the free place of the table, on the shelves and under the chair, since everything in his tent is freezing. In the evening, I fried biscuits for tea. He wrote a diary. Twice I tried to listen to the Comintern station, but nothing worked. It's very annoying when it's hard to hear on the radio. I want to know the news. We sit with headphones on, chasing every word on the air. The ice floe is quickly carried to the west. A great hurry began. A lot of ice has piled up near the cracks. From a distance, it seems that 3-story ice houses rise there. I wanted to photograph these glittering buildings, but poor visibility forced me to abandon the shooting. 18 August. A strong wind blew at night, and even with snow. All night long I could not sleep for a single minute. Genya made a series of magnetic observations. Theodorich was on duty in the camp. Only Pyotr Petrovich did not wake up until morning. Theodorich came out of the tent every now and then, fastened its stakes. The compression was slight, although the strength of the wind seemed to us that danger could now overtake us. Before morning, I fell asleep for a while, but soon woke up again and made cocoa. The weather is getting worse all the time. It is raining, which instantly turns into ice. There is no way to walk. All our tents and bases are covered with a large crust of transparent ice. All our clothes and raincoats are covered with the same ice crust. When we walk, ice falls off us all the time. Pyotr Petrovich continuously conducts helicopter observations. This case is so interesting, so important that Pyotr Petrovich pays a lot of attention to it. The discovery of the backflow at different depths should enrich the science of hydrology. And we are trying to do what is necessary for this, regardless of our original plans of work. All the secrets of the Central Polar Basin must be revealed. In the process of their work, Petrovich and Genya encounter phenomena that the scientific world did not know about. 2 of our scientists are trying to study all this new to the end, regardless of either work or time. I made wooden flooring in the tent. Although the snow does not stop, we have to carry planks from our bases, immersing ourselves knee-deep in water. We listened to the latest news on the radio. We found out how well the Aviation Day holiday was held today throughout the country. He did not want to sleep. We set to work again. We sprinkled snow on the tent and covered it with boards. Petrovich moved some of his scientific equipment to a living tent. We gave him our only table. Now we ourselves will write on our knees, putting pieces of plywood. It's good for the one with thick legs. Ernst quips, winking slyly in my direction. In fact, what can you not adapt to during your life on an ice floe? We gain a lot of life experience here. August 19th. It rained heavily all night, and we did not sleep again. For breakfast, Ernst and I fried scrambled eggs. Then we began to burn burners for Primus stoves. Teodorich is a great master of this business. We lit our large lamp, heated the burners well, and quickly cleaned them with steel wire. Ernst handed over to Rudolf Island a meteorological report prepared and processed by Eugene. I skied around the bases, opened every snow hole, tore off with great effort rubber bags with kerosene, which were frozen in the ice. After finishing my work at the bases and putting all our belongings in order, I went to the camp and prepared lunch. Everyone gathered in the galley and ate a hearty meal. Ernst and I smoked. Before resting, they fed easily. We listened to the program of the Arctic edition of Poslední Izvestia. We lay down on the skins on the floor of our tent, stretched out as if on the beach. Although the available living space restricts our movements, everyone carefully hung on every word, listened so as not to miss anything. The headphones were tightly pressed to their ears. We were very excited, since we had not heard Moscow for a long time. Announcer Golovina, we especially like her voice, at our request passed on an international review. My soul rejoiced that in Spain the valiant Republican units had beaten the rebels very thoroughly. Petrovich, despite the rain, worked with the turntables, watched the drift. He is glad that there is no frost and he does not need to heat water for the turntables. Genya has been processing the materials of gravitational observations all day. As he has accumulated a lot of notes, he folded his camping tent laboratory so that the wind would not tear it. After each strong wind, he has to seal one or another tent with enamel. He was tired of this, for soon it would come to the point where there would be nothing to repair. Both tents had already been torn apart. The silk tents turned out to be fragile. Their only advantage is that they do not allow water to pass through. Although the fabric is rubberized, the tents are very weak. The best material for a tent is linen. In the future, of course, you should not take silk tents on such expeditions. I was attracted by their lightness and small volume. Now I am convinced that this is an impractical and fragile material. The day after tomorrow is the 3-month anniversary of our stay on the Ice Floe. I calculated whether we had saved food and fuel. It turned out that 1 can of food, which we planned to spend for 10 days, was enough for us for 15 days. It turns out to be a very large savings. We have 40 cans of food left. We can live on an ice floe for more than a year. There is fuel for almost 2 years. A lot of fur clothes remained. Only socks and underwear we change once every 2 months. Now you will need to change clothes monthly. It is a pity that we do not have a bathhouse, but for now, we do it in an artisanal way. Once a month we wash each other's heads and necks. Only our Weasley often goes to natural lakes that have formed on an ice floe, and tries to swim there. We are watching him very strictly. End of the 4th part. Look for the next and previous parts of this story on our channel. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new episodes about explorers and freight forwarders, as well as about other exciting historical facts and stories. We will be very grateful for your subscription and likes to promote our interesting and useful videos. We love you and work for you.